Welcome out there in internet land. It is I, Prometheus, of Punching the Walls of Reality. This week I'll be recapping The Walking Dead Episode 2, Infested. Yeah, that's right. Only 2 episodes deep, and there's already a pretty substantial body count. So in this episode, just to recap, before I recap, obviously we saw Patrick, he's come down with some sort of illness where he bleeds from his eyeballs, he died and was reborn. But this time as a zombie. And this episode starts off with, somebody neglectfully failing to adhere to the Don't Feed the Walker sign and feeding rats, which is attracting all sorts of vermin, specifically of the undead variety. So, that's something that comes into play later on in the episode as the walkers. You wonder why they were, so hell-bent on hanging around that fence. It didn't really seem that interesting, but here they were. So after that, we cut to Tyrese and Karen. Tyrese is there trying to serenade Karen with, I don't know what he thought Baby Got Back was the song to do it, but apparently that took her completely out of the mood. She's like, I like you, Tyrese, but I'm gonna go. So she leaves, she washes her hands of that awful attempt to get her in the mood, and then she hears something rattling in the darkness, and she's like, alright, let me go ahead and investigate. She's looking around, she's got her flashlight, and then she's like, you know what, I'm actually tired. It's probably nothing. We are surrounded by bloodthirsty, undead zombies, but whatever. Who cares? Napping is much more important. So obviously the curtain she doesn't turn over, it turns up to be Patrick, reborn as a walker. So he follows her into cell block D, I believe it was. And he's thinking about eating her, but he's like, you know what? She's too important of a character. Let me go eat somebody else. So he stumbles upon a guy who I'll refer to as Sleeping Beauty, because when Patrick sinks his teeth into his throat, he doesn't so much as offer even a whimper. So he's obviously a very deep sleeper. Only a kiss could wake him. So, he just kind of sleeps through his own death. That's pretty lazy. So Patrick decides, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and gorge on this dude. So he's sitting there, ripping out his intestines, eating his heart or his liver or whatever that was that he was eating, and it looked pretty good. I don't know, it got me pretty hungry. I don't know about you. So after that, he's done eating. The other dude's undead now, so he's just like, ugh, ew, no thanks, it's gross. So then they start off turning the rest of that cell block into a buffet, and it's pretty gruesome. They thought this one they thought it was safe to leave their doors unlocked. Well, that shit happens. So we don't see a lot of Maggie and Glenn in this episode. They're there, obviously they're in the tower doing it, because that's pretty much all they do. And you could begrudge them for that, but I feel, especially on Glenn's part, really, it's like everyone's world has been torn apart, except for Glenn. Glenn started as a pizza delivery guy, and now he gets to wake up to Maggie every morning. I'm just saying, that sounds like a life upgrade to me. Sounds to me like sounds like he's coming out ahead, personally. I'm just saying, if I were in that position, I'd be doing the same thing he's doing, so I don't have any ill will towards him at all. Glenn, good job. As Patrick and Sleeping Beauty are feasting inside on all their friends and colleagues, Rick and Carl are out there doing a little bit of last-minute gardening. We see that Rick is not exactly the best gardener. I don't think you're supposed to have worms in all of your crops. I'm not a farmer myself. I occasionally eat a vegetable or two, but I'm pretty sure they shouldn't be infested with worms. So Rick's like, whatever, let me just give it to these pigs. They love worms. Worms are good for pigs. And at that time, Carl decides to ask for his gun back, and Rick kind of just blows him off. He's like, what do you need guns for? It's not like there's zombies everywhere. You'll be fine, kid. Shut up and eat your fucking worms. So at the same time, Michonne's about to leave, riding off on her horse, out there looking for, comic books and candies and the governor's severed head, which I'm sure she'd probably bring back as a trophy. Maybe even keeping it in an aquarium, I don't know. Maybe she just takes the traits of those she kills. But anyway, so she's about to leave, and all of a sudden Maggie is like, or no, it wasn't Maggie, I think it was the kids. I think it was Lizzie and Mika. And they're running around and like, oh my god, somebody help us! Oh no, we weren't invited to the buffet! So they're running out screaming. So Rick kicks into gear. Like, his life as a farmer is effectively over. He's running in there, taking charge just like he used to do, in all the previous seasons, So he runs in there. There was a funny scene where they're pretty much playing hot potato with a shotgun. You know, they run into the cell block. Daryl yanks the shotgun out of some just random dude's hand. Like, hey, I was using that to defend myself. And Daryl's like, you're not that important. So he takes it, gives it to Rick. Rick's like, I don't want this shit. So he hands it right back to somebody else off camera. Who was, presumably, I think it's probably the exact same guy who Daryl took it from originally. So I thought that was kind of funny. So anyway, they're running in there. They're you know, cleaning shop, stabbing dudes and shooting them, and you know, Daryl's shooting people in the head and in the eye with his crossbow, because that's what Daryl does, because Daryl's a badass. And so, meanwhile, Lizzie and Mika's father is bit in the arm, so Carol's like, alright, don't worry, I know what to do. I've seen Rick do this, all I gotta do is chop your arm off. It's gonna hurt me more than it's gonna hurt you. I lied, it's gonna hurt a shitload, and you're gonna wish I probably didn't cut your arm off. So as she's preparing to perform surgery, she realizes he was nibbled on to the back of the neck by walkers, so the surgery is going to be postponed indefinitely. So she's like, well, you're going to die, so let me get your daughters in here, because it's safe, you know, obviously, for you to turn and bite their faces off. So he's like, alright, so you can say your last goodbyes, and, you know, I'll send you on your merry little way. So he's like, Carol, make sure you take care of my daughters, you're all that they have left. And then Carol brings the daughters in, and he's like, Lizzie, take care of your younger sister. So Mika should be very well taken care of. I mean, she's got two people looking out for her on top of the rest of the group. You know, two personal, you know, guardian angels. So anyway, so Carol's like, well, he's dead now. So you guys get out of here. I gotta do my work. So and then you know, Lizzie is like, no, I got this. Give me that knife. I know how to do this. Saw a tutorial on YouTube. So she's gonna stab her dad in the brain, and then she's like, you know what? Nope. On second thought, I don't got this. You go ahead and do it. So Carol's like, alright. And, you know, knife in the brain. You know, he's out for the count. He's off to, not necessarily a better place, but he's gone. Alright, the deed's done. So she ushers them out of there, and, you know, that's all she wrote. Anyway, so Michonne's trip to wherever, to parts unknown, is cut short when she finds out that, you know, everyone needs help, and obviously, you know, Michonne is the type to lend her services. So she rides back into action. I don't know what happened to the horse. She dismounts and there's walkers behind her. I'm assuming the horse got eaten up. But anyway, two of the walkers attack her, knock her to the ground. She trips over some wire. I'm guessing that's part of the system to close the gates. Anyway, she trips on them. You know, Carl comes up there and he's like, oh yeah, the whole thing about me not having a gun? Yeah, well, I got one now. Pop! Blows the walker's brains out. And Michonne does a freaking judo toss, like throws the walker off of her and I guess twists her ankle in the process, or re-aggravates it after twisting it from falling, whatever happened. But anyway, the thing's like impaled and it's like, and Maggie's like, shut up, you're ruining the moment. He pops her in the head. And that's all there is as far as that's concerned. So later on, Rick comes out and he's all bloody. He's like, stay away, and Carl just runs up to him because, you know, following instructions isn't something Carl's good at. And he hugs him and he's like, yeah, so I kind of got a gun, even though I shouldn't have a gun, even though realistically I should have a gun, because obviously I can headshot somebody pretty damn good. So Rick's like, yeah, well, you know, whatever. But you know, I was proud of Maggie. You know, she actually contributed something that didn't have to do with sucking face with Glenn. So, I mean, that's always a plus. So, go Maggie. So Rick and Daryl and miscellaneous other characters, they're going through and they're being very thorough. They're making sure that everyone who's undead stays dead, doesn't come back and start feasting on the living. You know, they're thorough, unlike somebody, Karen, making sure that nothing is awry. So while they're in there, they find this guy, I believe his name is Charlie. They introduce some doctor, they don't say his name, but he's saying a bunch of big words, so I'm assuming he's a doctor. So he's talking about the guy died of asphyxiation, not David Carradine style, this was a lot more gruesome. Basically, he likened it to a soda can exploding in your lungs or something, drowning on your own blood. You know, not exactly your run-of-the-mill flu that I know of. I've never gotten the flu. But from what I hear that other people say, that's not how the flu works. So anyway, so it's this deadly strain. It kills in like 24 hours, and Herschel breaks it down. He dumbs it down for everybody else. He's like, yeah, you know, he choked on his own blood. Not good. So anyway, so basically they determined that they've all been exposed. They're not necessarily infected, but if you hear anybody coughing, you might want to be, just a little bit wary. So obviously the A-team, their council, Glenn, not Maggie's not one of them, but Glenn, Daryl, Sasha, Herschel, and I'm sure I'm probably leaving somebody out, but their council, so they're there, and basically, they're like, all right, we're all exposed, so we need to make sure that we don't come into contact with anybody. We don't want to get anybody else sick. And so as they're saying that, Karen's coughing up a lung. She's like, and they're like, whoa, you are crawling with plague, so we're going to move you to death row. You hang out there. And Tyrese is all sad looking like, but I wanted to sing her another lullaby. So anyway, he's not going to be deterred. He'll be back. So anyway, so they're moving her, and then she's like, oh yeah, well, this other guy, David, yeah, he's coughing too, so at least it won't be lonely. At least I have somebody to hang out with. So they move those two over there, and, seems like a good plan. Seems like they'll be safe. Daryl's going to go dig some graves. Herschel cautions him, cover your mouth and your hands, and, try not to get infected. Just do me that favor. Try not to get infected. We kind of need you. The fans need you, especially. So we find Lizzie and her sister, Mika. They're staring at the fence, and they're all looking all sad. And here comes Carol, and she's just like, I have to break it to you, Lizzie. You're weak, all right? You're not going to last in this world. You need to suck it up. You need to grow up quick. And Lizzie's like, yeah, she's all sad and crying. Like most people would be if their father just died right before their very eyes. And Carol's like, hey, stop being such a wuss, all right? And so we find, turns out Lizzie's not even angry at that. She's angry because her Walker friend Nick was killed, presumably by some type of sharp object to the brain. So she runs off, and Mika comes up and she sticks up for her sister, and she's like, Lizzie's not weak, she's just fucking weird. So then she just walks off, and it was a weird scene. That whole scene was bizarre. I don't know. I mean, I understand Carol's not exactly the best person you want for a grief counselor, but, I mean, she's lost people. She lost her daughter, her husband, who was kind of a jackass, so that's not really that big of a loss. But you'd think that she would have recognized that these are children, and even not even just children, like an adult still gonna be at least give them some time to grieve, at least 20 to 30 minutes or something. Don't just crawl up their ass the very next scene. So, shame on you, Carol. You need to be nicer. As Daryl's out there digging graves, Rick approaches him, and Daryl's like, hey, did good back there. It's good to have somebody that actually knows what the hell they're doing. Rick's like, yeah, I don't know how good I was without my gun. Should have probably brought my gun. And Daryl's like, hey, man, whenever you're ready to step up and, stop being a farmer and help out a little more, you're more than welcome to. You do a good job. And Rick's like, yeah, I guess. All those decisions were hard, and sometimes I make the wrong decisions, and there's just so much responsibility. And Daryl's like, hey, man, you're the only one helping me dig these graves. In my book, you're A-okay. So it's kind of left open. You're like, okay, well, is Rick going to get his gun back? You would imagine so after half the freaking town got eaten. Probably. So obviously there's no rest for the weary. So before they're even done digging those graves, they have another crisis. So this time, Maggie alarms them. The walkers are on the fence trying to get in. They realize, the walkers don't realize they don't have VIP passes. They're not allowed. They got to stay outside of the fence. So they're sitting there shaking it, trying to get in, like they're at a freaking concert. And so they start stabbing him in the head. And then Sasha sees, like, hey, where's my pet rat? Someone's been feeding my rats to these jackasses. Come on. So obviously, not only do they have to worry about walkers on the inside, there's some crazy disease. They got to worry about walkers on the outside because someone wants to feed them rats. So they're pushing through, and they're like, wow, I wish we had some mechanism like, I don't know, fire to just burn all these guys. And Rick's like, I got something better than fire, and it sizzles and smokes. So he runs off, and he's got all the little piglets. And it was touching. No one's going to remember the sacrifices those brave pigs made that day, but they made them. And I'll remember. Every time I eat bacon, I will remember. So he's in the back of the truck. Daryl's driving, and he's cutting the little pig's legs and tossing them down for the walkers to feast on. And at first I'm thinking, like, all right, he's going to do that to one pig. And then, oh no, here comes another pig. Cuts it, and the pig's like squealing, like, oh god, that hurt. Oh man, that's worse than becoming bacon. Rick cuts a third one and throws him out, and he looks all sad, like, damn, I was gonna eat that pig for breakfast. But I guess the walkers got to it first. So walkers had their fourth meal. They managed to get them away from the fence and avert that crisis. But so then afterwards, Rick's like, all right, I'm done being a farmer. Obviously, this world is not going to let me do it. So he starts burning the pig pen. He's covered in pig blood, and Carl's like, oh yeah, so he's like, all right, Carl, you win. Here's your gun back. And you know what? I might as well put my gun on too. And he's like, all right, let me just go ahead and make this metaphoric transformation complete and burn my freaking farming shirt. So he throws his pig blood stained shirt into the fire and just walks off into the sunset. So he's back. The Rick we know and love is back. Farmer Rick is gone, burned up into the ashes. So we learn a little bit from this episode. Beth sitting there nursing Judith or Judy or whatever you want to call her, and Michonne, and then Judith starts crying, and Michonne is like, ugh, she just has this grimace on her face. Like, can you please shut that child up? It's really obnoxious. It's giving me a bad chi, alright? So, and obviously, Beth singing, I thought it sounded pretty nice, but the baby didn't like it, so she's like, and threw up all over her, carrots, I believe. So Beth's like, hey, can you take this baby? And Michonne's like, ugh, no, I'm not fond of babies. And then, so, she hugs the baby a little bit. She's like, this is actually rather nice, and it's actually rather sad, and, she starts crying, and it's all sad, and it's implied that she may have had a child herself at some point, or she just doesn't like babies. I don't know. Sometimes babies bring a smile to people's faces, sometimes they make you cry. Everyone deals with things differently. Michonne is definitely a very different type of person. As Infected comes to an end, Cell Block A has been vacated. You see Tyrese, he's walking in there, he's got flowers. He's like, oh man, today is the day I'm gonna get me some. I'm not gonna ruin it by singing this time. So he's got flowers, they look more like weeds, but whatever, that's the best they got. So he walks in there, sees nothing but a blood stain. He's just like, oh, come on. So I realize his relationship with Karen's over without so much of a goodbye. He follows the blood trail, and apparently there are 2 blood trails, so apparently nobody else was anywhere in the vicinity when this happened, because you can just drag 2 people out in the open and set them ablaze. So they're both sitting out there extra crispy, and Tyrese drops to his knees and he's like, no! He's like, I will avenge you, Karen, in this life or the next I will avenge you. So now there's the mystery of who's feeding the walkers rats, who's burning bodies and killing them in their cells. And, it's probably the same person, or, it could always, obviously, it's a new character, Bob. Could be him, could be Lizzie. She seems to really like the walkers, even more than her own freaking dad. But I guess he was a walker for a little bit, or he would have been, so maybe she would have liked him better that way. So that's kind of the thing, I don't know if you learned, but I learned a couple of things from this episode. For one, couplings with people from Woodbury is very short-lived, as you saw with Beth and Zach, as you now see with Tyrese and Karen. So if you're going to have relations, you might want to make sure your relations are with people that are not from Woodbury, and it might last a little longer. Just ask Glenn and Maggie. Also, we learned that if you can't kill your father, or if you can't stop him from turning, you're weak. And that's not me saying that, that's Carol.
Honey, you're weak.
Carol taught me that lesson. So you need to toughen up. It is a dark and disturbing world out there. You need to get stronger. You can't just sit there and cry about it, pick flowers, and name walkers. And, well, I think the most important lesson we learned from this episode is do a job to the fullest. No procrastinating, no cutting corners, like Karen cut corners who's now dead. If you hear something go bump in the night, you might want to investigate thoroughly. You don't want to just be like, you don't want to blow it off because you might end up in a smoking pile of ash. Anyway, I'm Prometheus. This is my Walking Dead Season 4, Episode 2, Infected recap. You can find me at punchingthewallsreality.com, or if that hurts your fingers too much, you don't want to type, go to ptwr.com, which is there. And also be sure to subscribe to the video if you enjoyed it. It helps I don't know. It helps you subscribe. Just do it. Also, like the video if you liked it. If you didn't like it, like the video if you didn't like it. And leave a comment, whether positive, negative, or indifferent. And again, if you just want to palm strike the keyboard, that works. Whatever. Just put something down there. Thank you. And I'll see you guys next week.